Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse number 37, right, Prabhuji? To confirm again.
Yes, Prabhu.
Apiyadyanastvam sarvakiti jasasi switsrudho nichushva yasamna chanyad bhavata padambujat prayenam rajaso yogamahasham. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today? Though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us, now when all the kings are at enmity with us. Purport. The Pandavas are the foremost because with all good luck they were entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. In the material world, to be dependent on the mercy of someone else is the utmost sign of misfortune. But in the case of a transcendental relation with the Lord, it is the most fortunate case when we can live completely dependent on Him. In the material disease, it is due to the thinking of becoming independent of everything. But the cruel material nature does not allow us to become independent. The false attempt to become independent of the stringent laws of nature is known as material advancement of experimental knowledge. The whole material world is moving on this false attempt to become independent of the laws of nature. Beginning from Ravana, who wanted to prepare a direct staircase to the planets of heaven, down to the present age, they are trying to overcome all laws of nature. They are trying now to approach distinct planetary systems by electronic mechanical power. But the highest goal of human civilization is to work under the guidance of the Lord and become completely dependent on Him. The highest achievement of the perfect civilization is to work with valor, but at the same time depend completely on the Lord. I'll repeat the sentence once again. The highest achievement of perfect civilization is to work with valor and at the same time depend completely on the Lord. The Pandavas were the ideal executors of this standard of civilization. Undoubtedly, they are completely dependent on the goodwill of Lord Sri Krishna, but they were not idle parasites of the Lord. They were all highly qualified, both by personal character and by physical activities. Still, they always looked for the mercy of the Lord because they knew that every living being is dependent by constitutional position. The perfection of life is therefore to become dependent on the will of the Lord instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. Those who try to become falsely independent of the Lord are called anatha, or without any guardian, whereas those who are completely dependent on the will of the Lord are called sanatha, or those having someone to protect them. Therefore, we must try to be sanatha so that we can always be protected from the unfavorable conditions of material nature. By the deluding power of eternal material nature, we forget that the material condition of life is the most undesirable perplexity. The Bhagavad Gita, therefore, directs us 7.19 that many births, after many births, one fortunate person becomes aware of the fact that Vasudeva is all in all, and the best way of leading one's life is to surrender unto him completely. This is the sign of a Mahatma. All the members of the Pandavas family are Mahatmas in household life. Yudhishthira Maharaj was the head of the Mahatmas, and the Queen Kunti Devi was the mother. The lessons of the Bhagavad Gita and all the Puranas, specifically the Bhagavad Purana, are therefore inevitably connected with the history of the Pandava Mahatmas. For them, the separation of the Lord was just like separation of a fish from water. Srimati Kunti Devi therefore felt such separation like thunderbolt, and the whole prayer of the queen is to try to persuade the Lord to stay with them. After the battle of Kurukshetra, although the inimical kings were killed, their sons and grandsons were still there to deal with the Pandavas. It is not only the Pandavas who were put into the condition of enmity, but all of us are always in such a condition. And the best way of living is to become completely dependent on the will of the Lord and thereby overcome all difficulties of material nature. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namavam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Acharya Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna, welcome to the morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Before I speak a few words, I'd like to seek the blessings of all Vaishnavas. Today is a very I would say a powerful verse. I don't have much, personal realization, but I will try to repeat what Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing here and what I've heard from the Acharyas. So translation, O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today, though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us, now when all kings are at enmity with us? So we can see how Mother Kunti is praying, right? She actually spent, and I'll open my notes quickly. Actually, the prayers are going from verse number 18 all the way through 43. So until now, I think if somebody has the guide from Srimad Bhagavatam, it clearly depicts how these prayers are broken into different sections. The first 18 through 20 was discussing about knowing the Lord. Then 21 to 25, she's saying how fortunate I am that I have your association. And then she also describes the qualifications for somebody to approach the Lord. And then she gives information about how the Lord's nature is inconceivable. It is totally bewildering. I spoke in that section last time. And then she gives some opinions on the Lord's birth. And now we're going to the final section. So this is the first in the final section of our prayers, verses 37 through 43, where she's appealing for more and more association of the Lord. So I think that is the theme here. So in this verse, you can see clearly how she's asking for more association. As Krishna is leaving to Dwaraka, she's asking for more and more association. Today's purport, I think Srila Prabhupada very nicely puts how the living entity is very dependent on the Lord, and how in this material nature, in this modern day world at least, we become totally, we feel, or every endeavor we do, we want to become totally independent. So I'll try to summarize this purport. So Srila Prabhupada is starting this purport by saying that, in this, who is fortunate? Who is a very fortunate person, right? In the first line itself, he's saying the Pandavas are the most fortunate because with all good luck, they were entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. So when I first, when I started reading this, I was kind of, thinking, what kind of luck did Pandavas have? The Pandavas were in troubles all the way from their birth, right? The Pandavas were born, when after the fact that Pandu was not exiled, but he was cursed, right? And then as after a few years after the Pandavas were born, they lost their father. Pandu Maharaj, right? Then they came, and Kunti was, as a single mother, she had to raise all the 5 kids. She had to take that responsibility of raising all the 5 children. But she was dependent on, the mercy of the Kaurava, meaning Dhritarashtra and Bhishma Dev and whatnot. And then we also hear about how many troubles they had to go through when they are children, because of the enmity of Duryodhana. And then when they grew up, they had again more troubles, right? They did not get their rightful kingdom. Then they were exiled. After exile, what Draupadi had to go through, and then the battle of Kurukshetra. I mean, what kind of good luck did they have in their life? Because when you look at it from our material perspective, right, we completely think that is not a good luck at all. Now, Srila Prabhupada is saying it is good luck because they were entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. So and then Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain that how the goal of life, the goal of life is to understand our real nature, and then with that concept to understand that we are truly dependent on the mercy of the Lord. So, and then interestingly, Srila Prabhupada changes the whole sequence back while we're dependent on the Lord. He, in halfway through the purport, I repeated that verse, right? He says, the highest achievement of the perfection of the perfect civilization is to work with valor. So that means, we are working as if everything is dependent on us. And then at the same time, depend completely on the Lord. So this is the dilemma of Arjuna, right? Arjuna asks all these questions, right after the completion of chapter 2 in Bhagavad Gita, and then chapter 3 and chapter 4. He kind of says, Krishna, you are asking me to fight, and then you are asking me to renounce. How can we do this, right? So it's an art, I would say, right? When we do something, we cannot, and Srila Prabhupada nicely says, I think later I'm trying to find that sentence. He says, we should not be lazy, or we should not be, let me find the exact words, right? Okay, I'm unable to find it. I'll get to that, right? We cannot be, we cannot be lazy saying that I'm dependent on the Lord and then I not do anything, right? So the art that Srila Prabhupada is focusing here is how we should put all our efforts and endeavor to accomplishing the will of the Lord, and at the same time be dependent on the Lord. And then this consciousness is very rare. That's what Srila Prabhupada goes on to quote verse number 7, 0.19 in Bhagavad Gita. He talks about Mahatma. No, what is it? After many births, Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. He talks about how Bahunam Janmanamante, after many births, one achieves the consciousness of Vasudeva Sarvamiti, meaning that Krishna is the everything and all in all. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha, he says. So such souls are Sudurlabha, or meaning very rare to be seen around. And in that purport, actually, Srila Prabhupada very nicely describes what is the true meaning of that, right? Because yes, we understand that Bahunam Janmana, after many births, one achieves that consciousness. Then, we are not at that stage. Can we get to that stage, right? But he's not talking, Prabhupada very nicely, interestingly changes in that purport. And actually, I think he quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or Baladev Deoshan, I don't remember exactly. And it is in very much parallel to the lines of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes, how an individual, I'll get to that point. But what Srila Prabhupada says in that purport is, This consciousness of realizing that Krishna is all in all is very rare. And then if you are able to come in association of a person who has achieved that consciousness, that that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that whoever has achieved that consciousness, we are very fortunate. So that is the mercy that we all have received. And then I was quoting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? He talks, when he talks to Rupa Goswami at Aswamedha Ghat, he talks about how the living entity is going from one planetary system to another planet, from Brahmandate, Kona Bhagavanji. He says about him, Brahmanda Brahmate Kona Bhagavanji, Guru Krishna Prasadapai Bhakti Lata Beach. He says the living entity is going from one Brahmand to another Brahmand, one planetary system to another planetary system, one body to another body in the 8.4 million species. But he becomes fortunate when he comes into the association of a devotee who knows that Krishna is the all in all. And then he gets that devotee's association and he becomes fortunate. So each one of us, who have this very, very rare opportunity should consider ourselves very fortunate, right? If you think about the number of living entities that are around us in this material world, even within the room that you're sitting, there are millions of living entities. And just think about this planet, how insignificant we are. We are not even a tiny dot in this universe. But somehow by that fortune, we have gained the association of devotees like Srila Prabhupada, his followers, who are, who have realized that Krishna is all in all. And then we are all fortunate to have each other's association, right? Because we understand that, while we may not realize it, at least theoretically we understand, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that Krishna is all in all, and each one of us are collectively trying to endeavor and achieve that state of Vasudeva Sarvamiti. So we should always, moment to moment, think of ourselves as very fortunate that we have each other's association. Because this consciousness of this Krishna consciousness can easily go away in a moment. The reason is, earlier we described, right? Because in this material world, everybody is endeavoring to get out of, endeavoring to become independent. So once we fall in the wrong association, or for some reason we do not realize how fortunate that we have another devotees association, and then we contemplate on things that are not truly, I would say, helpful for our Krishna consciousness, or if we develop enmity or whatever, for whatever reason, if we commit offenses, we can easily lose this consciousness. Sometimes we take shelter of this verse in Bhagavad Gita saying that, Krishna, when Arjuna asks Krishna, what if I do not achieve my goal of life? And Krishna gives us abhayam. He says, I will protect you, whatever you have achieved, I will retain, and whatever you lack, I will give you. A lot of times we tend to take shelter of that verse, but in essence, we need to understand that if we lose Krishna, if we lose Krishna consciousness, yes, our assets will remain, but at the same time, I'll give a nice an analogy that I heard that really helped me understand this. How do we understand? How do we balance the risk of losing Krishna consciousness, and also at the same time feeling sheltered that even if I do not perfect, Krishna will protect me, right? So somebody asked a question to a devotee, a very senior Vaishnava, asked, how, if some people, they have achieved so much in their Krishna consciousness, but all of a sudden they leave Krishna consciousness for whatever reason, and they have dedicated their life for several decades in contributing in serving Krishna, but one fine day they just left the moment. How do we understand? And then they go back to the material world. Now, when Krishna says, I'm going to protect what you have, how come they gave up Krishna consciousness, even though Krishna gives he says that he gives the surety that we will be protected. He will retain what we have. Then apparently we see that this devotee has left the moment. How can we, how do we understand that, right? So the way we can understand that is, this devotee was giving a nice example of, say, you earned $1 million. So you are a millionaire, right? When you have this $1 million, you are a millionaire. And now you say you took this $1 million and put it in a bank, and then you forgot about your bank, which bank you put this money in. Are you a millionaire? Yes, you are a millionaire. But at the same time, you do not have access to that money. Now say, you have no income, you have no shelter, no food, and anything. Even though you have money that's belonging to you, it's sitting in a bank, but because you forgot where this money is, you have to suffer being like a poverty-stricken person with no food, no shelter, or anything. That's because we have forgotten that where we put our money. Now, someday, by fortune, or somehow you remembered it, or somebody came and helped you remember that you put this $1 million in a certain bank, and now you have access to this bank. So at that very moment, you can go back, and you are a millionaire, and you can leverage that money to help your poverty-stricken situation. That is bhakti here, right? Now, knowingly or unknowingly, each one of us has earned, millions, billions, and trillions of credits from bhakti, and that's why we're fortunate that we are able to chant the holy name of the Lord. But if we are not careful, we will just forget one day that we have access to this. And we have to, and Srila Prabhupada very nicely tells in this purport that we have to suffer in this material world. Now, what causes one to forget this? That you have this mercy. First thing is when you lose gratitude, when we expect something, right? When we expect that somebody should behave in a certain way, or somebody should treat me in a certain way, or somebody shouldn't have treated me in a certain way, and whatnot. So the moment we forget how fortunate we are, what we got, even though we do not deserve, and then we flip that coin and say, I deserve something, there is a highly likelihood that we will become poverty-stricken in a moment's notice, right? So it's very careful. It's very important to stay away from those anarthas, especially Vaishnava aparadh being one of the biggest ones. So, and this is in this mood we can read this verse, right? Krishna is leaving Mother Kunti in physical association, and then Queen Kunti is expressing her heart, her feelings, saying that, my dear Lord, I'm totally dependent on you. How can you leave me? There is nobody else to protect us. And then there are these enemies that are ready to kill us, because a lot of the kings were killed in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and all these kings, while they are dead, they have their children who are still alive. They all became enemies against the Pandavas, right? And we saw how Ashwadhama became an enemy because he lost his master, and how he killed the sons of the Pandavas. So we can also be in that mood where, my dear Krishna, we are very fortunate that we have your association, but there are so many anarthas within our heart as enemies, and they are ready to attack us, which will cause us not to have your protection. Okay, this is what I could add here. Anybody wants to add any comments to add a little more to this and share anything with the Vaishnavas here? All right.
Very, very nice, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. But I love that analogy that you just brought in. I love to keep it in my notes, and it's very nice. And we don't understand that our battle is against so many anarthas, which may be still there, lurking there. And we can be suddenly knocked off the That's a very, very, very good point you took this verse. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Okay, then we'll end it here for today. Grandaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Today 1 hour
Then,
we have in
Prabhu,
yeah, go ahead, Prabhu.
yeah, I was reminding the same thing. Nothing much.
So we have 1 more hour. We have 30 more minutes.
Half an hour more.
Okay. Okay, then I can share a few things. I'll try to share while others, if somebody wants to. Yeah, another verse that came into my mind is because Srila Prabhupada is talking about how one can surrender, one has to surrender to the will of the Lord, right? Obviously, it's called the Charma verse, meaning one of the most important verses in Bhagavad Gita, which is Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Praja Aham Tvam Sarva Papepya Mokshayishyami Ma Suchaha. So this is the process of Sharanagati. Bhaktivinoda Thakur very nicely explains about this Sharanagatis. I actually have one whole lecture, a very nicely composed lecture. But the verse, how Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that verse is Anukulyasya Sankalpa Pratikulyasya Vivarchanam Rakshetya Shvasa Guptrite Varnam Tata. After that it goes to Karpanya. And yeah, basically there are 6 limbs of Sharanagati. That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. Anukulyasya Sankalpa. Anukulyasya Sankalpa means accepting what is favorable to Krishna consciousness. Pratikulyasya Vivarchanam. Pratikulyasya Vivarchanam means rejecting what is not favorable to Krishna consciousness. Rakshayati Vishwasa. One should understand that Krishna is the protector. Goptate Varnam Tata. And Krishna is the maintainer. And then the next one is being humble. One should be humble. And this is the process of Sharanagati, or the process of surrendering unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. That was Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Raja, right? The Sharanam. So I think the 2 things that often give me inspiration, I would say, obviously Anukulyasya Sankalpa, that has become very easy for us. I'll tell you why, right? Now, accepting what is favorable to Krishna consciousness and rejecting what is not favorable to Krishna consciousness, that has become, I would say, easy for us in one sense by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. Because when we go through the process of initiation, our spiritual master takes some vows from us. And then he says, follow the 4 regulative principles, which is no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. It's actually important for one to take those very seriously, because what very nicely explained what it says is, when you follow these 4 regulative principles, it brings you to the platform of goodness. It takes you from the mode of ignorance, mode of passion, and it brings you to the platform of goodness, which kind of gives you eligibility to perform bhakti, or even start chanting the holy names of the Lord. Right? So that is Anukulyasya Sankalpa. Sorry, Pratikulyasya Vivarchanam. So it is important to do that. And obviously, if you get deeper into scriptures and try to understand how our parampara handles Anukulyasya Sankalpa and Pratikulyasya Vivarchanam, it's very nicely explained by Srila Rupa Goswami in Next of Instruction, right? So there are 6 things that are favorable to Krishna consciousness, 6 things that are not favorable, Atyahara, Prayasascha, Prajalpo, Niyamagraha, Janasanganscha, Lavlyancha. So we can go deep into that. But what I'm trying to share here is, those, just by taking the shelter of the instructions of the spiritual master, we are able to start our surrender. And then if you carefully observe, the other instruction is chant the holy names of the Lord, right? Regularly chant the holy names of the Lord. And that is putting you in the platform of pure devotional service. So if one may, a lot of times there may be conflict meaning a conditioned material mind thinks, oh, I gave this word to my spiritual master, or for somebody who's is going to seek initiation, right? Will I be able to follow for the rest of my life? Will I follow these instructions and whatnot, right? And very nicely put, His Holiness Rampal Swami says, the empowerment comes through the instruction itself. So when the instruction is given by the spiritual master, the empowerment also comes from the spiritual master. It is not our own endeavor, actually. It is the empowerment of the spiritual master. And often, sometimes I realize in my life, various stages of my life where, my chanting is not in good quality or whatnot, but somehow or the other, right? Because I gave my vow. Let me chant my holy names. Let me chant 16 rounds, somehow complete the rounds. Some days, if things are not well, let me complete it at least the next day. Sometimes when I think about that, I feel that, I am continuing my Krishna consciousness just because out of the mercy, our spiritual master has taken that vow from us. So it is more a favor. While we feel that we have given a vow, it is a spiritual master that has mercifully taken that vow. And this vow that he has taken from us actually helps us go through the lows of our life. The highs of our life, well and good. We're able to chant the holy name, we're able to focus, we're able to take association. But it becomes critical in the lows of our life, right? When we are low in our life, just because we gave this word, we're still connected with the holy name. And sometimes I feel if I had not given this, or my spiritual master has not taken this vow from me, probably, maybe in these lows of life, I would have not followed the 4 regulative principles, or I would have not chanted the holy name of the Lord. And often, one has to realize, I realized in my early Krishna consciousness when my Siksha Guru mentioned once, right? I was chanting a few rounds for a year or so. And then there was a break. And then I started chanting again. When I came in contact with my Shiksha Guru after a few years, he was asking, how long have you been chanting and whatnot. I told him, Prabhuji, I chanted, so many number of rounds for a few years, and then there was a break, and then I started back again. He casually said one thing that really stuck with me. He said, for somebody who takes a break from chanting, it becomes extremely difficult to get back to chanting again. And that has been my observation. I'm really glad you were able to get back to it. That kind of stuck to me in my heart, because we see that it is very true. For somebody who stops chanting, it becomes extremely difficult unless they receive some mercy from somewhere to start chanting again. Often to start chanting, it's very easy. But once you start chanting and then you take a break, it becomes extremely difficult to start again. So that kind of stuck with me for a long time, right? And then I keep on thinking, just because we gave this vow to the spiritual master, or differently said, the spiritual master took this vow from us. And just because of that vow, we chant during the lows of our life, right? We continue to chant inattentively or not. But because of that vow, only we need to realize that we are still in Krishna consciousness. If the spiritual master had not taken this vow, during the lows of our life, we would have given up Krishna consciousness. So we can see how those first 2 instructions or the first 2 steps of Sharanagati have become very easy in our life by the mercy of the spiritual master. Anukulyasya Sankalpa and Pratikulyasya Varjanam. And then the same is true with regulative principles or anything, right? If we break them, it becomes extremely hard to get back to norm, because those are called, in one sense, in material language, it's called habits. It's hard to give up bad habits, right? And then Rakshayati Vishwaso, meaning one should understand Krishna is my only protector. And then today's verse very nicely described how Krishna is the sole protector for us, because there are so many things that we think we are doing on our own to protect ourselves. But Krishna is the only protector. And then we see those in the past tense of Bhagavatam, right? How Gajendra, who is the king of all, king of elephants, and he's like the king of the beasts there. But he could not find shelter. Similarly, there are so many stories in Srimad Bhagavatam. The next one becomes kind of, I really like it, Goptrute Varnam Tata, because Krishna is the maintainer. Often it's easy for us to realize that yes, Krishna is my protector, I'm totally dependent on Krishna. The other aspect where we struggle is Goptrute Varnam Tata, and also today's verse touches it, where especially when we have dependents, right? When we have dependents, that people, when we have entities that are dependent on us, it could be our children, it could be our family member, spouse, it could be our parents or anybody, right? We often think we are supporting them. What will happen to them if I am not supporting them? And that is where the Goptrute Varnam Tata concept comes. Krishna is the maintainer. Even though they are being maintained through us, it is important to understand that Krishna is the maintainer. How many living entities are there in this material world? And Srila Prabhupada very nicely gives an example, I believe, in Bhagavad Gita. We think we are endeavoring hard, we are going to work, or sometimes we feel, we are dependent on our work too, right? Krishna is, the work is giving us money, the work is maintaining us. And Srila Prabhupada gives this classic example of, there are elephants who eat tons and tons of grass in one day, and those elephants are being maintained by Krishna. So often, I think the subtle point that we miss is we don't see that Krishna is maintaining us, because Krishna maintains us for our basic needs. Yes, for sure. The food that we need, the shelter that we need. Anything beyond that, right? The sense gratification that we're looking for, anything beyond that is dependent on our own karmic credits. So if you are expecting a lot of money, a lot of something, sense gratification, whatnot, that's not something that Krishna will give you. That is dependent on our karmic credits. If I'm not talking about a pure devotional platform here right now. If we are looking for something more than our maintenance, that's where demigod worship comes into play. That's where our past karma comes into play, and everything comes into play. So it's important to understand that subtle difference of what am I looking forward for, and yes, this is what Krishna is going to help, is definitely going to maintain me for sure. But anything beyond that, Krishna may give, may not give, and it also depends on our karma, like I said. So that's, and the same is true with our dependents, right? We can understand that how Krishna is going to protect our dependents and maintain our dependence. But if we are expecting much more than maintenance and whatnot, again, it will depend totally on their own karmic credits, not necessarily what we want, what we desire, or what we want. And obviously, we talked a little about humility after Goptrute Varnam Tata, Karpanya. So how one should be humble, if we are not humble in our Krishna consciousness, how that can totally be destroyed. Our dependence on Krishna is going to be totally destroyed. So this is another verse that came into my mind as I was reading the purport of how Sarvadharman Parityajya is very much related to this particular verse. And I think the other verse that Srila Prabhupada is talking about is Mahatmanas. Who is a Mahatma? He's talking about how the Pandavas are Mahatmas. There, the verse he's quoting there is from Bhagavad Gita, Mahatmanas Tumam Partha Daivam Prakrita Ashrata. So he takes up who is a Mahatma, because, and I think this is controversial, little bit subtle topic. Not everybody can understand, but because this is a small Bhagavatam class, I can share that, because the Mahatma title has been misused. For example, Mahatma Gandhi and whatnot. And Srila Prabhupada quotes that, according to Bhagavad Gita, who is a Mahatma? A Mahatma is one who is Daivim Prakritim Ashritaha, who has taken the shelter of the Daivi Prakriti. And then Srila Prabhupada doesn't bring this up in Bhagavad Gita, but he does bring it up in Nectar of Instruction, in the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. And some devotees put it very nicely. They ask a question: do you know that Radharani is quoted in Bhagavad Gita right in the middle of Kurukshetra? And this is the verse where Krishna quotes Radharani is, and this is right in the middle of Bhagavad Gita too. He talks about Daivim Prakriti. The actual name for Daivim Prakriti, or the internal energy of the Lord, is Srimati Radharani. So Mahatmanastam Mahampartha Daivim Prakriti, meaning who is a Mahatma who has taken the shelter of Srimati Radharani. So in one sense, we can, you can all consider yourselves Mahatma, because out of the great fortune of the association of Srila Prabhupada, his disciples, and with all of your association, each one of us is able to take shelter of Srimati Radharani, which is a very, very rare thing, because she's a hidden, hidden personality, and we are so fortunate to have that shelter of Srimati Radharani, or the fortunate of taking shelter of Srimati Radharani. Any other topics I'm thinking about? Yep, I think those are the verses that Srila Prabhupada is quoting from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, from the basics, the ABCs. Bhagavad Gita is considered as ABCs of Krishna consciousness, and that is what something more I could add today. I see Premananda Mataji on the call. Mataji, you would like to add something? Anybody else wants to add anything here?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much. It is a beautiful class. I mean, in the first half of that, you covered the analogy of a rich man losing the money. I mean, how does it compare to devotees leaving the the process? I mean, it was very very nice example. I mean, I always think about it. I mean, when we see these kind of situations happen. But yeah, the nice analogy that you gave, it gives very clear understanding. And the second thing is, I mean, yeah, the other point I was kind of appreciating is, I mean, what we need to have, the gratitude, right? That is the primary thing. I mean, instead of not realizing what we got it and looking for, yeah, this person did not look at me and smile at me. Yeah, I mean, even simple things, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, that will make us create that kind of negative attitude towards those devotees, which will make us go away from Krishna. I mean, simple things. I mean, but yeah, gratitude is the one thing what we are getting from the association of devotees. Appreciating that will keep us, in connected with the devotees and Krishna. So if we don't do that, then we'll be thrown out of that association. So because Krishna doesn't like when we are committing these kind of offenses, right? Although we are doing it, but still, yeah, devotees are merciful. We are still. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Prabhu. Nicely.
Yes, Prabhuji. And going back to, I think, where you mentioned, one point I would like to add is, somebody did not smile at us, somebody said something. Those can create blocks in our heart, right? Obviously we are conditioned souls. We are not pure devotees. We cannot be oblivious to things. Those can create blocks in our hearts, right? And Krishna consciousness is a holistic solution. It doesn't say, don't do this, and then just leave it in limbo or anything like that, right? It also gives a solution always. It points out to a problem, and it also gives a solution. And then that also comes in Nectar of Instruction, right, where he talks about dadati pratigrahanati guhyamakyate. So if there's any blocks in our heart, it's important to clear, not necessarily like go and fight with devotees, or it's important to reveal our heart to someone, right? There's this feeling in my heart that and I think some feelings we can just overcome easily, right? Some feelings we may have to reveal that to someone, and sometimes it could be just Krishna himself. Sometimes, I mean, at least one or two instances when I had some form of block in my heart, and how Radha Madhav are powerful, at least for me. Just going in front of Radha Madhav and just praying them, Krishna, please help me understand what this is, right? and then Krishna reveals some, he gives some knowledge from within, and then that blocks, these blocks are considered like darkness, right? So for the darkness to go away, it needs light. If you think that I will just put this darkness in the corner, or I'll just tolerate it, yeah, sometimes you're able to tolerate it. But if that keeps coming back into your mind and your heart again and again, it is very important to bring that into light. That's why it says, asatoma sadgamaya tamasima jyotirgamaya, right? When there is darkness, the only way you can dissipate darkness is through light. And especially within Sangha, right? Something Gaurang Prabhu said once, and it kind of stuck with my heart, is what is the purpose of our life, right? What is our purpose of our life? A lot of times we just give very high level, or the topmost, we say, we want to surrender to Krishna. Actually, if you take in babies, not even baby steps, if you take it to the basics, the purpose of our life is cleansing. But this cleansing happens at 4 different levels. On the gross body platform, the cleansing happens by taking regular bath, keeping our environment clean, and like keeping your house clean, whatnot, right? That is physical level. But when you go to the mind, intelligence, and false ego, the cleansing process of the mind is chanting the holy names of the Lord. That clears our mind. Then the cleansing process at the intelligence level is reading scriptures. The third thing, and the important thing that we need to understand, and which is a double-edged, double-sided sword, is cleansing our ego is through the association of devotees. Sadhu Sangha or Sangha cleanses our ego. So it's important for us to understand, in the Sangha of devotees, our ego is going to get crushed, because that's the process. If you start cleaning your house, dust is going to come. So when you take Sangha of devotees and our expectation is, I will be nice and happy, nobody is going to hurt my ego, inevitably your ego is going to be hurt, because that is the cleansing process for ego, to understand our true identity. And sometimes when our ego gets hurt, it's easy to overcome it, by the mercy of Krishna, but sometimes that remains like a dark place in our heart. So it is important to clarify things. If you're at equals levels, see if you can clarify things with the same person, or reveal your heart to somebody else, so that they can help bring us into light. So that's an important concept to understand, that yes, in the Sangha of devotees, our ego is going to get hurt, but Krishna also gives a solution to that, right? Dadati pratigrahnati, meaning enhance your relationship. By enhancing your relationship, that hurt of ego is going to go away, and it becomes more a relationship on the platform of devotion. And that is Dadati pratigrahnati, meaning, share prasadam, take them to them, take prasadam from them. Then reveal in confidence, reveal your heart in confidence, open your heart and listen to their open heart, and then obviously share some gifts with them and receive some gifts with them. That is the Sangha. So sorry, Prabhuji, I just wanted to add that one point of how Vaishnava aparadha can kick us away from Krishna consciousness, but there's also a solution to it, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else? We have 4 more minutes. Okay, Lingaraj Prabhu, can we end it with your permission?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, this is Sri Kishore Das.
Hare Krishna.
The last point which you mentioned is really wonderful, Prabhu. I have been contemplating on this for some time. The purification that happens at various levels. as you said, the purpose of life is cleansing our heart. So I heard in one of the places, like put by Radhesham Prabhu, he says it is purification of heart and glorification of God. This is the purpose of life. And you have nicely put it in the way of, like, cleansing happening at the level of mind and then intelligence by reading scriptures. And then the ego is purified by the association of Vaishnavas, Dadati Pratigrihnati and all that principles. Yeah, that really is like, I have been thinking on this for a while, that how ego is purified. It is not so easy, first of all, to understand that we have some difficulty at an ego level itself takes some maturity. Actually, it doesn't come just like that. Yeah, we can understand there is impurity in the mind, that mind keeps getting attracted to nonsense things, and intelligence also sometimes, but then the level of ego, it is too subtle for us to understand it very easily. And I think that is why we keep what to say, we don't give much importance sometimes to the association. We don't understand that, okay, this is where I get purified. At least in the beginning, it was my case that I did not approach the association of devotees with that attitude. I was always thinking that, okay, by staying with them, it will be good, it will be nice. But that was more on an emotional platform. I think when we accept it with this attitude that, this is meant for my purification, rather than just, keeping some, as Radhanath Maharaj says, it is a kind of spiritual entertainment. So it's not just spiritual entertainment. It is meant for our purification. I think that is when we make some serious advancement, because everything is related to the ego. Like, if we can actually destroy our false ego and put ourselves in the real ego, then I think it's very easy to control our mind. It's very easy to think through proper intelligence, and all that happens very easily. I think that really helped my thoughts also, Prabhu. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, Prabhuji. No, thank you for sharing your experience, Prabhuji. Yeah, sorry, I two things that came to me as you're speaking, Prabhuji, is often when we are in the association of devotees, we apply principles, everything that we learned, and where our ego really gets hurt is we apply these principles to other people, saying that that person should behave like this person should behave like this, and I heard a quote saying that it's important to be strict on oneself and lenient on others. And I think that another principle came into my mind. The second one is, false ego when it gets hurt, it's not easy to handle it, right? Because it's deep rooted. Just like if you have a tooth that is aching and which is going all the way, it's that needs root canal treatment. That means it needs to go in the root. It's going to be extremely painful, right? Something that some guidelines that we can keep within our life so that we don't go to that root canal treatment is also following the principles of Vaishnava etiquette. Because it's important to understand, when somebody, often, right, when our false ego gets hurt, we feel that we are right and somebody else is wrong, right? So another principle and that I was thinking is, when we follow Vaishnava etiquette and say it's, if somebody is senior to me, that's not something I should be correcting or whatnot. When somebody is equal to me, if I have a good relationship, I can share something. If somebody is junior to me, meaning they are willing to listen to us, it's okay to share. It's also very important to follow Vaishnava etiquette too. So that these are guardrails to continue to stay in the Sangha of devotees and not commit any offenses, so that one day it doesn't become a situation where we forgot where our $1 million are. So there are two more things that came to my mind as you shared your wonderful realizations. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Lingaraj Prabhu, you are the in charge here. So
Thank
this is a
Thank you,
nice
Prabhu.
service. This is a nice service that you're doing. Yes.
Hare
Mantaj, you
Krishna.
were saying something. Yes.
Thank you so much. Think very practical discussion today, and it benefited me a lot. Just think about relationships in spiritual life. Because it's one thing to have like what do you say, like superficial relationships where we don't have to pay attention to our ego sometimes. Nothing gets hurt. You're just going on. But when there are deeper relationships, then definitely this whole thing about false ego triggers and stuff like that happens. And sometimes it's bewildering. There's so much understanding, but there's an emotional component where there's no reconciliation with the understanding. So talking about this, discussing this helps. So just working on myself as well. So it helps, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. This is the third time I'm saying. Okay. Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.